Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show that cuts through the noise and gets straight to the insights you need. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of the most exciting and, let's be honest, sometimes bewildering intersections of our time, where cutting-edge AI meets the very bedrock of human creativity. We're talking about the incredible power of generative AI models, the kind that can conjure up anything from a painting to a piece of code in mere moments. But with that astonishing capability comes some monumental questions, especially concerning intellectual property. Where do the rights of creators end and the vast, hungry training data of AI models begin? This deep dive isn't just an exploration, it's a crucial mission to understand the new ground rules being laid out to tackle these very questions.
And our focus today is a truly significant document from the European Union, their Code of Practice for General-Purpose AI Models copyright chapter. This isn't just another piece of legal text. Think of it as the EU's proactive attempt to draw a clear map through the complex and often chaotic landscape where AI development and copyright law collide. It's a guiding light, aiming to bring some much-needed clarity to what has, until now, felt a bit like the Wild West.
Exactly. Our mission today is to crack open this guiding document, distill its essence, and extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, specifically for you. We want you to walk away understanding what AI providers are now expected to do, what content creators can anticipate, and how the EU is really trying to thread that needle, fostering innovation while rigorously protecting the rights of those who create. This core document is our compass, so let's jump right in. Okay, let's unpack this. We've heard about the Code of Practice, but what is it really? Is it a hard and fast law, a strong suggestion, or, something else? What are its big picture ambitions?
Yeah, that's a fundamental question because its nature really defines its impact. The big picture goal of this code is, well, it's pretty ambitious, reaching far beyond just copyright. It's all about making the EU's single market work better, promoting AI that's human-centric and trustworthy, safeguarding fundamental rights like health and safety, and, crucially, supporting innovation. This is all part of the larger vision laid out in the EU's Comprehensive AI Act.
Ah, right. So it's a broad stroke, aiming for a grand vision of responsible AI, not just a narrow copyright rulebook.
Precisely. And within that grand vision, this specific copyright chapter has two core objectives. First, it acts as a guiding document for AI model providers. It shows them a pathway, a set of recommended best practices to demonstrate how they comply with certain obligations under the AI Act, particularly around transparency and data sourcing. However, and this is really key, the document is very clear. Following this code doesn't automatically mean you're perfectly compliant with the law. It's a framework, a strong recommendation, but not a get-out-of-jail-free card, so to speak.
Okay, interesting. So not conclusive proof of compliance.
Exactly. And second, it gives the newly established EU AI office a benchmark to assess how well these providers are actually meeting their obligations.
That's a really interesting nuance. It's like a strong moral imperative, maybe de facto standard that everyone's expected to follow, even if it's not directly enforceable line by line. What does this mean for someone listening right now?
Well, what this means for you, the listener, whether you're building AI, creating content, or just using AI tools in your daily life, is that it sets the tone. It sets the tone for how AI will operate across the EU. It's influencing the future development and deployment of AI models. It's shaping the ethical and legal expectations, signaling a move towards greater accountability from the very companies building these powerful tools. It's really defining the terms of engagement between AI and, well, the vast sea of human creativity.
Okay, and this particular chapter zooms right in on copyright, which, let's face it, is where things often get thorny. So before we delve into how AI models are supposed to behave, can you give us a quick refresher on how copyright typically works in the EU, especially when we talk about AI reading massive amounts of data, what's known as text and data mining, or TDM?
Absolutely. At its heart, EU copyright law, built on key directives, gives creators exclusive rights over their original works. Think of it like a digital lock on their content. These rights are preventive in nature, which means they put the power squarely in the creator's hands. You can't typically use their work without asking first. It's a fundamental principle you need prior consent for nearly any use, especially commercial ones.
That sounds pretty straightforward for traditional uses of content. But AI, by its very nature, isn't traditional, is it? It needs to ingest huge amounts of data to learn. Here's where it gets really interesting, because there must be an exception for that, right? Otherwise, how could it even function?
Indeed. And this is where the crucial exception for text and data mining, or TDM, comes into play. Under EU law, TDM is generally allowed, but under very specific conditions. First, whoever's doing the mining must have lawful access to the content. You can't just hack into a protected database or bypass a paywall.
Right, makes sense. No breaking and entering digitally.
Exactly. And second, and this is the absolute critical part for this code, the rights holders must not have expressly reserved their rights in an appropriate manner.
Whoa, hang on. That's a critical point for creators.
Yeah.
So the default is kind of, yes, you can mine it unless the creator actively says no. The onus is on them to reserve the right.
Precisely. The default, for the purpose of TDM under this exception, leans towards allowing it unless the rights holder has taken clear steps to opt out or reserve their rights appropriately. And that exception, particularly the conditions of lawful access and the ability for creators to reserve rights, is the core tension this code aims to address. It's the battleground, if you like, for how AI learns from existing creative works across the digital landscape. It really determines what AI models can legally read and extract to build their knowledge. And that impacts every creator and every AI developer out there.
So with this understanding of copyright, the exclusive rights, but also this TDM exception, what's the very first concrete commitment general purpose AI model providers need to make according to this code? It sounds like they can't just, wing it anymore.
You're absolutely right. Winging it is definitely out. The very first commitment, what we can call Commitment 1, copyright policy, is foundational. AI providers, they call them signatories in the document, are now expected to draw up, maintain, and actively implement a robust policy to comply with EU copyright law. This policy specifically needs to address how they will identify and respect any rights reservations that creators express. It's about building an internal playbook for copyright compliance.
Okay, so they need a dedicated written strategy for copyright within their organization. That feels like a significant step towards formalizing their responsibilities. It's also a move towards transparency too, right?
It definitely is. Under Measure 1.1, this policy needs to be a single comprehensive document covering all the points in this chapter. Organizations must assign clear internal responsibilities for its implementation and oversight. And yes, they're encouraged, though not strictly mandated in all cases, to make a public summary of their policy available. That's a powerful signal of intent, helps build trust with creators and the public.
Encouraged is an interesting word there. Why isn't it a hard requirement to publish the whole thing? Does that leave some wiggle room?
It certainly suggests a degree of flexibility, perhaps allowing providers to adapt how they present it, maybe keeping some internal operational details private. But even with this policy, there's an important caveat. These internal measures help demonstrate that they have a policy, right? But AI providers remain fully responsible for ensuring their policy actually complies with the specific copyright laws of individual EU member states. If they get it wrong, they're still on the hook legally.
Gotcha. So the policy shows intent, but compliance is still judged by the actual law.
Exactly. So for you, the listener, this means a dedicated team, and clear rules are now expected internally from AI developers, but the ultimate legal responsibility for avoiding infringement still rests squarely on their shoulders.
Okay, this is where the rubber truly meets the road then. If an AI model is like a digital explorer tirelessly crawling the World Wide Web to gather training data, how does it know what's fair game and what's strictly off limits under these new rules? The internet is just vast.
It really is, and this section gets very practical very quickly.
Under Measure 1.2, AI providers commit to only reproducing and extracting lawfully accessible, copyright-protected content. This means their web crawlers, when collecting data for TDM and training, are specifically instructed not to circumvent effective technological measures. Imagine a website with a paywall or login required for subscribers. AI providers cannot bypass that, just as you or I couldn't legally. It's respecting the digital locks creators put in place.
So no sneaking past the velvet rope and then claiming you didn't see the bouncer, basically.
Exactly. A good analogy. And it goes further. They also commit to excluding websites that are persistently and repeatedly infringing copyright on a commercial scale, as identified by EU or EEA courts or authorities. The code even mentions that a dynamic public list of these known pirate sites will be available on an EU website, giving AI developers a clear no-go zone.
Wow, that's a very concrete mechanism, essentially a blacklist for AI crawlers updated by authorities. That's quite something. But what about legitimate sites where a rights holder does want to reserve their TDM rights for specific content? How does an AI know not to use that specific piece?
That's Measure 1.3, and it's all about identifying and complying with those rights reservations when crawling the web. The primary tool discussed here is the robots.txt protocol. AI providers must employ web crawlers that read and follow the instructions in robots.txt files. Think of it as a widely accepted digital do not disturb sign for websites. If a creator puts a specific instruction in their robots.txt file saying, AI, please don't mind this content for TDM, the AI is now obligated to listen.
So robots.txt, which has been around for ages, suddenly becomes a critical, kind of legally recognized tool for creators in this context. But what if a creator isn't technically savvy enough for robots.txt, or maybe they use something else, like metadata?
Good question. The code anticipates that. Beyond robots.txt, AI providers also commit to identifying and complying with other appropriate machine-readable protocols. This could include things like metadata embedded in files or maybe other standardized signals that emerge. The key is that these alternative protocols must either be adopted by international or European standardization bodies or be considered state-of-the-art, technically implementable, widely adopted by right shoulders across different cultural sectors, and generally agreed upon through an inclusive process at the EU level.
That sounds like a huge collaborative effort is needed, practically creating a universal language for AI to understand these copyright boundaries, beyond just robots.txt.
It really is. It's a big ask, actually. It's pushing for industry-wide consensus on new digital communication standards between creators and AI developers. And it's crucial to remember, this commitment doesn't limit a right shoulder's ability to express reservations in any appropriate manner. It's not exclusively about these machine-readable methods, though they are the focus for crawlers. AI providers are actually encouraged to actively support the development of these new standards through genuine discussions with right shoulders.
So dialogue is built into the expectation.
Yes. Plus, they commit to making public information available about their web crawlers, how they handle robots.txt and other protocols, and their compliance measures generally. They also need to provide a way for affected right shoulders to be automatically notified of updates, maybe through something like a web feed.
And there's even a specific point about search engines here, too, isn't there? A sort of balancing act.
Exactly. Providers who also operate online search engines are encouraged to ensure that respecting TDM rights reservations doesn't adversely affect the indexing of that content in their search engine results. It's tricky. So for you, the listener, you need to grasp that this is a massive push for a more structured Speak AI web. Creators are getting potentially louder, clearer voices to signal, hands off my work for training, and AI companies are now required to listen to these machine-readable signals. This isn't just about technical compliance, it's about reshaping the digital landscape to bake in consent from the ground up. If you're a blogger, an artist, a musician, a writer with a website, learning how to properly configure your robots.txt file or looking into emerging standards could become your first and most effective line of defense.
Okay, so AI developers are trying to be careful, or are supposed to be careful, about what goes into the training data. That makes perfect sense. But what about what comes out? What if an AI model, even with the best intentions and all these input safeguards, still generates something that, well, infringes on someone's copyright? We've all heard stories, maybe seen examples of AI hallucinating or spitting out content that seems eerily similar to existing works.
That's a critical challenge, absolutely. And the code confronts it directly with Measure 1.4. Mitigate the risk of copyright infringing outputs. AI providers commit to implementing appropriate and proportionate technical safeguards to prevent their models from generating outputs that reproduce training content in an infringing manner. This is about building the guardrails into the model itself, trying to stop it from just, regurgitating protected stuff it learned. Not just managing the inputs, they must also explicitly prohibit copyright infringing uses of their models in their acceptable use policies, their terms and conditions.
Right, the fine print we all click through.
Exactly. Or for open source models, by prominently alerting users to this prohibition in the accompanying documentation.
So it's a multi-pronged approach. Technical prevention built into the AI, and clear policy rules for users saying, don't use this to infringe. But even with all that, nothing is foolproof, surely. So what if a right shoulder still believes their copyright has been infringed by an AI's output? How do they even begin to get in touch with these often massive AI companies? It sometimes feels like shouting into the digital void.
That's precisely where Measure 1.5, designate a point of contact and enable the lodging of complaints, comes in. This is about access and recourse. AI providers commit to designating a readily accessible point of contact for electronic communication with affected right shoulders. This means a clear, published email address or an easy-to-find online form. No more burying contact info deep in a maze-like website, hopefully. They also commit to putting a mechanism in place for rights holders, and importantly, they're authorized representatives like collective management organizations or CMOs to submit complaints electronically.
Okay, so a clear channel. But what kind of complaint? Can you just fire off an angry email?
Well, wording is key here. They need to allow submission of sufficiently precise and adequately substantiated complaints. So that suggests the onus is still somewhat on the creator or their rep to provide clear, actionable evidence, not just a vague feeling of infringement.
Right. You can't just say, I think your AI stole my vibe. You need specifics.
Exactly. If your work is infringed, you'll likely need to clearly show what was copied, where your original work is, and how the AI output reproduces it without authorization. And crucially, once a valid complaint is lodged, AI providers are obligated to act on these complaints in a diligent, non-arbitrary manner and within a reasonable time, unless the complaint is clearly unfounded or basically identical to one they've already dealt with.
Diligent, non-arbitrary, reasonable time. Sounds like standard legal language, but important nonetheless.
It is. So for you, the listener, this means AI companies aren't just expected to try to prevent infringement. They also need to provide clear, functional recourse channels for creators when things do go wrong. It's about building trust and offering clear lines of communication in a system that has, let's be honest, historically felt pretty opaque and maybe unresponsive to individual creators.
So stepping back now, what does this entire code of practice ultimately mean? For you, the listener, for the broader trajectory of AI development in the EU and, frankly, probably influencing things across the globe. It feels like a really pivotal moment, but also maybe just the beginning of a much larger conversation.
You've hit on it perfectly, I think. This code of practice is a truly significant proactive step by the EU. It's trying to bring clarity, responsibility, and accountability to general-purpose AI development, specifically regarding copyright, which has been a huge gray area. It really highlights the delicate, often precarious balance between fostering lightning-fast innovation, which everyone wants, and vigorously protecting the fundamental rights of creators, which is essential for culture and the economy. It also unequivocally underscores that state-of-the-art technologies aren't just for making AI models faster or smarter, they're also essential for ethical and legal compliance, for building and implementing those critical safeguards we've been talking about.
And it really seems to push for a new era of collaboration, doesn't it? Trying to bridge what's often felt like a pretty wide gap between the tech world and the creative community.
Absolutely. It's a clear call for, well, unprecedented collaboration, pushing for industry-wide agreed protocols for open discussions between AI developers and rights holders. This isn't just a static legal document. It's presented as a foundational attempt to build a bridge across what has been, at times, a very wide chasm between AI innovation and creator protection. It's a living framework, really, reflecting an ongoing effort to define what fair use and responsible development actually look like in the age of truly powerful generative AI.
We've taken a deep dive into the EU's latest framework for AI and copyright. It's definitely a complex topic, navigating those uncharted waters where technology and creativity collide. But hopefully you now feel much more informed about the very real commitments and expectations being placed on AI model providers operating within the EU and likely influencing practices elsewhere.
It absolutely pushes the boundaries of how we define digital rights in an AI-driven world. It's asking us to fundamentally reconsider the very mechanisms of consent, control, and compensation in our global, always-on digital environment. It's big stuff.
Absolutely. And for a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up, consider how these guidelines will not only shape what AI models are trained on, but also, perhaps more profoundly, how creative works are published, tagged, and maybe even protected online in the future. Will this push for machine-readable rights, like robots.txt and other standards, lead to a kind of universal new standard for content sharing across the entire internet? Could it fundamentally change how we all interact with digital media in ways we can only just begin to imagine? That's a truly fascinating question, perhaps, for another day.